I welcome you to the channel which explores various issues benefiting students, faculty, and industry professionals. I am Professor Jitesh Thakkar, Professor Logistics and Supply Chain Management and Dean Academics at Gati Shakti Vishwavidyalaya, Central University, Vadodara. Gati Shakti Vishwavidyalaya is India's first and only university in transportation and logistics sector with a very clear mandate given by Government of India to contribute in the domain of all modes of transport, rail, road, aviation, waterways, ports and shipping with a focus on all three dimensions: technology, that is infrastructure, management, that is services, and policy, which is regulations. The university is established by Ministry of Railways, Government of India. Faculty and student development is a multifaceted agenda which requires grooming on various aspects within the broader domain of teaching, research, and experiential learning. The aim of this platform is to address how faculty and students can respond to evolving educational needs and challenges in interdisciplinary education and research as expected by new education policy NEP 2020. The platform shares the content in broadly three areas for the 360-degree and holistic development of faculty and student in higher education institutions. Number one, enhance teaching effectiveness using improved pedagogical skills, innovative teaching methods, classroom management techniques, student engagement strategies, utilizing educational technology, and foster critical thinking for solving complex problems. Number two, promote research excellence and productivity by providing training in research methodology, data analysis, and scholarly writing. And number three, enhance experiential learning through projects, internships, and exposure to real-world problems. This platform explores critical dimensions of faculty and student development for enhancing the capability and quality of most important stakeholder of higher education system, faculty and students. This video exchanges the views on when a researcher should use statistical, inferential, empirical research approach. Typically, when you talk about the data-driven approach, statistical, inferential, or empirical research approach, then we are targeting for a large-scale study, investigating a particular population based on the sample to draw some of the generalizable conclusions and inferences about the population under consideration. So it is important to know what are the conditions under which this kind of research approach, research method is most suitable. So a researcher considering statistical, inferential, empirical research should understand that this approach is most applicable and useful under 5 unique conditions. Number one, when you as a researcher is interested in testing the hypothesis and developing the theories with the data. You have a strong data-driven focus to test the hypothesis and develop the theories. You have a specific prediction. You want to determine if there is a statistically significant relationship between variables. You need objective evidence. So, statistical analysis provides a way to quantify the strength of evidences and reduce the subjective interpretations. For example, testing the hypothesis that there is a positive correlation between hours of study and exam scores. We may have intuitions But unless we conduct a statistical, evidence-based study, data-driven study, we cannot really quantify, and subsequently, we cannot really predict or forecast that how many additional hours of investment in the study would lead to the percentage increase in the score. Number two, condition, situation in which the statistical empirical study is most useful, research is most useful when you are interested to measure and quantify the phenomena. So you need precise measurements. You want to determine the magnitude of an effect or the prevalence of a phenomena, and you need to compare the groups. So maybe let us say you have vendor group 1, vendor group 2, vendor group 3, or you have a class A student, class division B student, division C students, and you want to compare their scores. So under any such kind of situation, when you want to derive the statistical significance of comparison, the most appropriate method is the statistical approach. So, for example, measuring the effectiveness of new drug by comparing outcomes in treatment group versus control group. Number three, when you are interested to generalize the finding to a larger population, as I mentioned, you need a representative data. You want to draw conclusions that apply beyond specific sample you studied for a population, and you need to estimate population parameters. What would be the average weight of a population? What would be the average score of a school or university? What would be the average intellect of a particular population, life expectancy, many more. So you need to estimate the population parameter based on your sample. For example, conducting a survey to estimate the percentage of voters who support a particular candidate. Number four, where the statistical, empirical, or inferential approach is most useful is control for confounding variables. You want to isolate the effect of specific variables, and you don't want those variables really to influence your study or have the impact on your dependent variable. So statistical techniques like regression analysis can help you to account for the influence of other factors that might affect your results. For example, studying the impact of exercise on weight loss while controlling for factors like diet and change. Number five is establishing cause and effect relationship. When you want to investigate the causal relationship among the variables, you need to adopt the statistical inferential approach to understand not only the causality among the variables, but the strength of the relationship. So, for example, conducting a clinical trial to determine if a new treatment causes a reduction in symptoms. There are key characteristics of statistical empirical research. First is data collection. Involves collecting numerical data through methods like surveys, experiments, observations, existing data sets, secondary data. Statistical analysis. Use statistical techniques to summarize, analyze, and interpret the data. Emphasis on objectivity compared to subjectivity, which is very much there in the case-based research. So this statistical inferential research aims to minimize the bias and provide objective evidence for conclusions or inferences, and focus on generalizability. Even though I am conducting the study using the sample, because this sample is chosen on a random basis, it represents the population. I can generalize my finding to a larger population. There are some important considerations which can help you to improve the quality and rigor of your empirical research. Number one is sample size. So a sufficiently large and adequate sample size will help you to minimize the bias in your study and your findings can be generalized to a larger population. Number two, data quality. Accurate and reliable data is essential for meaningful statistical analysis. Otherwise, it simply follows the principle of GIGO, garbage in and garbage out. Appropriate statistical methods. Choosing the right statistical technique is crucial for valid conclusions. So you have univariate, you have bivariate and multivariate statistical techniques, and it is important that considering your research questions and the hypotheses, you choose an appropriate method to investigate your issue. There are few examples that would help us to further understand that under what circumstances or situation statistical, inferential, empirical research is most useful. Let us see the context of public health and medicine. And the case is clinical trials for new drugs. So researchers conduct randomized controlled trials, RCTs, where participants are randomly assigned to either a treatment group receiving the new drug or control group receiving a placebo or standard treatment. They collect data on various outcomes using the statistical test like t-test, ANOVA to determine if there is statistically significant difference between the target group and the control group, and really the new drug has a positive significant impact on the treatment or not. Inference, yes, if the treatment group shows a statistically significant improvement compared to the control group, researcher infer that the new drug is effective in treating a particular disease. There can be other situations like epidemiological studies on risk factors for diseases. Researchers collect data on lifestyle factors, environmental exposures, and disease incidence in a sample population. They use statistical technique like regression analysis to identify associations between risk factors and the disease outcomes, and the kind of decision or inference the researcher can make. Maybe if a strong association is found between a specific factor like smoking and disease like lung cancer, researcher infer that this factor is a risk factor for a larger population. Let us look at other domain where this statistical inferential research is highly useful, and that is economics and business. For example, market research and consumer behavior, which is a very, very important area. Companies conduct surveys or experiments to collect data on consumer preferences, publishing habits, purchasing habits, responses to marketing campaigns and strategies, and they use statistical analysis to identify trends, patterns, and relationship in the data. Inference, if a survey shows that majority of respondents prefer a new product feature, the company may infer that there is a strong market demand for that particular feature, and they should now improvise that their product or take care of this feature in the development of a new product. Similarly, we can think about an example in economic forecasting. Economists collect the data on various economic indicators like GDP, inflation, unemployment, and use statistical models to forecast future economic trends. And the kind of inference the researcher can make may be like, based on the model's prediction, policymaker and business can make decisions about fiscal policy, investment strategies, and resource allocation. Similarly, we can think about the other context where this empirical statistical research is highly utilized is the social science and psychology. Studies on the impact of social media on mental health is one of the area. And researcher may collect the data on social media usage, mental health, indicators like anxiety, depression, and other relevant factors and they can use the statistical methods to analyze the relationship between these variables. Inference: if a study finds a statistically significant correlation between excessive social media use and increased anxiety or depression, researcher may infer that social media use can contribute to mental health problems in the broader population. An appropriate policy intervention can be initiated. Similarly, educational research on teaching methods. Today we talk about traditional pedagogy, flipped classroom method, mixed approach, and so on. So researchers conduct experiments in classroom setting to compare the effectiveness of different teaching methods. They collect data on student performance and the statistical test to determine if there are significant differences between the methods. So broadly, there are some key elements involved. Whatever examples we have seen, and typically when you conduct the statistical inferential kind of empirical research, the key elements are data collection. So it can be done through surveys, online surveys or offline surveys, experiments, observations, or existing database, which is the secondary data available. You can use the various statistical analysis once you have the credible data, and this can involve univariate, bivariate, multivariate, t-test, z-test, app-test, ANOVA, structural equation modeling, factor analysis, correspondent analysis, principal component analysis, and so on. Inference: yes, based on your analysis, you can draw the inferences that for a given level of statistical significance, what is the credibility of your result, the kind of inference you made, and based on that, what is the possibility to generalize your finding for a larger population. It is important to remember that inferences drawn from statistical empirical research are probabilistic because it is for a given level of statistical significance, not definitive, and they are based on available evidence and assumptions of the statistical methods used. If there is a change in trend in future, then certainly there is a need to reconduct the study and once again examine your inferences and hence the policy drawn based on such inferences. Let us break down the entire gamut of statistical analysis techniques into three broader domains. Number one is univariate analysis, only one variable is involved. Second is bivariate analysis, where two variables are involved. And number three is multivariate analysis, where three or more variables are involved. If you look at the univariate analysis, then you can conduct the descriptive statistical analysis, which may begin with some of the measures of central tendency like mean, that is the average value, average height of the students, average score, and so on. Median, middle value when data is ordered, so median income and so on. Mode, most frequently occurring value, most common, shoe size, and so on. You have measures of dispersion or spread, that is the range difference between minimum and maximum value in the data set. Variance, average of squared differences from the mean. Example, variability in plant growth. Standard deviation, square root of the variance. Maybe you are interested to find the standard deviations of the exam scores. Interquartile range, range of the middle 50% of the data, maybe spread of the house prices. You can use, in addition to the descriptive statistics as a part of univariate analysis, the other approach is frequency distribution. You show the number of times each value or range of values occur. For example, number of students in each grade level. You can portray the data or information using histogram, bar charts. It's a visual representation of the frequency distribution. For example, distribution of income or ages in the population. The another example is analyzing the distribution of ages in population to determine the average age range, and most common age group. The second category of statistical analysis is bivariate analysis, where two variables are involved. Bivariate analysis explores the relationship between two variables. For example, you can conduct the correlation analysis, which measures the strength and direction of a linear relationship. Your Pearson correlation for two continuous variables, example, relationship between height and weight. You have Spearman correlation for two ordinal or non-normally distributed continuous variables. For example, relationship between ranking in class and test scores. The another method within bivariate analysis, which is widely used for various kinds of predictions, is regression analysis. So you have different kind of regressions possible: linear regression, logistic regression, non-linear regression, and so on. So this models basically captures the relationship between dependent variable and one or more independent variable. So you can have simple linear regression or multiple linear regression, logistic regression, non-linear regression, and so on. The other bivariate statistical analysis method is chi-square test. It is the test for association between two categorical variables. Example, relationship between gender and political affiliation. You can conduct t-test, compare the means of two groups. For example, the lead time of vendor 1 and lead time of vendor 2, and I want to draw a conclusion about variability or the mean lead time and the difference between these two, and based on that I want to revise my contract condition, then t-test can be used. So you may have independent sample t-test where you compare the means of two independent groups. Example may be comparing test scores of students taught by two different methods, or you can do paired sample t-test, compares means of the same group at two different times. Example, comparing blood pressure before and after medication. The another approach within the broader domain of bivariate analysis is ANOVA, analysis of variance. This compares the means of three or more groups, comparing, for example, the crop yields under different fertilizer treatments, and so on. So typically, for example, you want to investigate the relationship between smoking and lung cancer using a chi-square test, or analyzing the impact of advertising spending on scales using linear regression. That falls well within the domain of bivariate analysis. The third category of statistical analysis is multivariate analysis, where three or more variables are involved. So you have multiple regression, which typically captures the relationship between a dependent variable and multiple independent variable. For example, predicting house prices based on size, location, number of bedrooms, and various amenities, and so on. You can do factor analysis, which reduces a large number of variables into a smaller number of underlying factors and identifying underlying factors which are influencing the customer behavior or satisfaction could be one of the example of factor analysis. You can conduct cluster analysis, where you are interested to cluster some of the factors responsible for a particular phenomena. So groups similar observation into clusters based on their characteristics, maybe segmenting customers into different market segments. Discriminant analysis is another technique within multivariate statistical analysis. It predicts groups' membership based on a set of predictor variables, classifying customers as likely to default on a loan or not. You have MANOVA, that is multivariate analysis of variance, and this compares the means of multiple dependent variables across different groups, comparing the effects of, for example, different teaching methods on student performance in multiple subjects. You have another very important and widely used method as a part of multivariate analysis is structural equation modeling, SEM. So this technique tests complex relationship by conducting multiple linear regression correlation analysis simultaneously, and it tries to examine the relationship between multiple variables, including causal relationship. So modeling, let us say, the relationship between job satisfaction, motivation, and performance, you can very well capture through structural equation modeling. The another well-known statistical, multivariate statistical analysis approach we have is principal component analysis. So it is a dimensionality reduction technique. And typically, this is used to simplify complex data sets by identifying the most important components that capture the most variance in the data. The example may be studying the factors influencing customer loyalty. It could be product quality, customer service, price, and using multiple regression or segmenting customers into different groups using cluster analysis technique based on their purchasing behavior could be the areas where multivariate technique, statistical analysis technique can be effectively deployed. So yes, this is a simplified overview of three broader categories of statistical analysis. Each technique has a specific assumptions and requirements for its appropriate use for the context being investigated. You may like to refer our research papers utilizing structural equation modeling approach. The first paper is Sustainable Supply Chain Practices and Empirical Investigation on Indian Automobile Industry. It is published in Production Planning and Control in year 2016, volume 27, number 1, pages 49 to 64 by PRC Gopal and Professor Jitesh Thakkar, myself. The another paper which utilizes structural equation modeling approach is direct and mediation effect of supply chain complexity drivers on supply chain performance, empirical evidences of organizational complexity theory. This paper is published in one of the reputed journal, that is International Journal of Operations and Production Management, in year 2022. Volume 42, number 6, pages 797 to 825 by Chand P, Kumar A, Thakkar J, myself, and Ghosh, Kunal Kanti Ghosh. So to conclude, statistical, inferential, empirical research is the most widely used technique across various domains in engineering, management, social science, medical science, and many more areas to derive inferences based on statistical evidence's significance and generalize it for a larger population. Gati Shakti Vishwavidyalaya, which is India's first and only university in transportation and logistics sector, has a unique role to play in terms of creating highly skilled manpower for all the modes of transport, rail, road, aviation, water, ports and shipping. GSV, Gati Shakti Vishwavidyalaya, extend programs at all the levels, UG, PG, executive training, PhD, to see that nation can meet its aspiration for reducing the logistics cost from 14% to 8 to 9%. Transportation sector is a growth engine for India, which contributes roughly 6.3% of GDP of the nation, and the university offers demand-driven curriculum with a focus on all three dimensions in transportation and logistics, that is technology, which is infrastructure, management, which is services, and policy, that is regulations, to strengthen the ecosystem of multimodal logistics in India. In line with the vision, innovation-led, industry-driven university, Gati Shakti Vishwavidyalaya has collaborated with the various leading industries like Airbus, Nippon Koi, Siemens, Jacobs, Plaza India, Railtel, and many others to see that the ecosystem in transport and logistics sector can be strengthened and that can benefit the country, a very diverse country like India. Thank you for your interest in learning the various dimensions of faculty and student development. We will keep exploring more issues through this platform for the benefit of faculty and students, most critical entity in the higher education system in India.